Let's talk about, okay, so obviously we're right here because we're talking about books. How many books have you written?
6.
So you have wrote 6.
Yes.
And how many copies of books roughly have you sold?
Ooh, gosh.
Are we talking about 100 or are we talking about
100,000 plus probably? Yeah.
And that, like, so you make money off of selling books also?
Yes.
But then you also, obviously, it's like an upgrade and everything like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So how long does it typically take someone to write a book? Because you've gone through this process with like, what, 5,000 people?
Yeah, yeah. So how long does it typically take? So I think it's 50 to 70% or so of our students write and publish their book in less than a year. Now, if you just say, how long does it generally take people to write books? I mean, if you're going through a traditional publishing company, it's going to be a minimum of 2 years plus. If you're self-publishing on your own, it might be a year, it might be a decade, depending on how disciplined you are, right? But our goal is to save people hundreds of hours in the process. So it's like, how do you move through the process faster, but also write a better book? I mean, it's Parkinson's law. If, an object will swell in proportion to the amount of time you give yourself to complete this thing. So what we found, at least, is even with traditionally published books, most of the writing happens in the last 2 months before the manuscript deadline. Right?
Yeah,
it's
buddy.
Like, I've got this deadline I got to hit. And so it's like, okay, well, what if we just did that, but from the start? And we have kind of this forced constraint that will help you get the book done faster, but also write a better book.
Well, how do you put pressure on people to do that forced constraint?
Yeah.
It's like their service that they paid $6,000 plus for runs out.
Exactly. Well, it's like the classic. It's the classic. When growing up, it's my mom and I did P90X. So you ever heard of that? And it's like, you're paying like $100 for DVDs back in the day. And it was like, everyone said, you're paying $100 for DVDs? It's like, well, no, you're people who pay attention. Like, I'm paying so that I will then actually do the thing. And so sure, there's part of it is that, but then a lot of it is, the reason we went more up market is because we just saw students got better results when they had more accountability and coaching. So we had the kind of, okay, here's the course only piece, but those students just didn't get as much results. So we said, how can we go up market enough to where we can like push in accountability mechanisms? So there's one-on-one coaching throughout. There's hundreds of group coaching calls over the course of a year. Like, we have multiple group coaching calls every single day where people just hop into a Zoom room. It's like set up to where if someone's sitting in one phase for too long, like they say they're in the rough draft phase, it's like someone on my team will call them and say, hey, I just want to check in. Like, how's the book going? Let's take the next step. And just like always trying to hold people accountable to take the next step, which, I think in theory, there's a lot of reason people pay us money, but then sometimes it's not as comfortable when you're on the other end of it, where it's like, hey, no, you need to write your book. Like, you need to get it done. You've been sitting in the rough draft phase for 3 months. Like, what are you doing?
You're so nice. I can't imagine you like pushing someone.
I'm not making those calls.
Okay, God, you're way too nice, but you need someone like me to come be like, hey, I will come to your house and kill you.
No, we're friendly.
So that's really interesting. You always do first of all, I'm always fascinated by your business model, because when I first met you, you were doing this also. And I thought you were selling just like a single course, like for $49 on Udemy or something like that. Then I realized your introductory offer at the time was like $5,000 or $6,000. And I was like, oh wait, that's different.
Yeah.
And I remember like you kind of have jumped to what the end evolution, I think, of courses is. Right now it was courses but you basically give people more work.
Yeah.
Then I think it's going to cohorts right now. Like that's kind of like a definite trend. And you've kind of done, yours is a little bit like a cohort. Like within 1 year, you're going to publish a book.
Yes.
But you don't start everyone at the same time. It's like I could start tomorrow if I want.
It's a rolling cohort. Yeah.
Rolling cohort. I've never heard that word.
Yeah, which probably defeats the purpose. It's like that's an oxymoron in a sense. It's like, it's okay, that's maybe not a cohort. But because we have probably, I don't know, whatever it is, 5 to 10 people are signing up per day. Mm-hmm. It's like there's a rolling amount of, if you hop in on this group coaching call, that's the rough draft group coaching call, will automatically, well, I guess, and kind of how we do it is we just flipped things probably 2 years ago where we said, there's a course promise, and then there's milestones to get to that promise. So we break it down, and I think it's about 7 milestones. And then we said, well, what if we just put the milestones at the front of everything that we do. And then everything else is just supporting that, right? So it's like group coaching call, one-on-one coaching call, curriculum in the course, like everything is just, okay, now how do we help this student take the very next step into their next milestone? And so then we just said, oh, well, now we're going to have group coaching calls, but they're all specific to the milestones. And so then most people, the way they do cohorts is like, oh, when did you sign up? Okay, you're in that cohort, right? Well, it's like, well, this should actually be based on where people are at in the process, because we might have signed up at the same time and you might be way further ahead than me. Well, the fact that we're grouped now in this same cohort is not really that helpful. But if I know that I can show up to a rough draft group coaching call or a rough draft like half day workshop, and know that all those people are working on the same exact thing, maybe I can find an accountability partner in there as well. And it's like, so it's just, but you have to be at a certain volume where that makes sense. Otherwise, I mean, and I remember it was a chicken or the egg conundrum for us in the early days. It's like, man, we're doing these big launches a couple times a year. I feel like we need to switch from that, because it's like the crack business model of just like, it's like make all this money in a short period of time and then it's just feast or famine. And so then we finally broke that threshold, and then it was, okay, now we've got these rolling cohorts and we can sign people up at any time. And
what do you, so with that launch model of courses, I mean, I've seen it a million times, including with myself and a bunch of creators we've produced for, is just like, they do a launch, and the first time a creator does a launch, it works really well because everyone's like, wow, I've never seen a product from them. They're excited. And then it's like, they're like, wow, that worked well. Maybe this become a business. And then they're like, we'll launch it a second time. And everyone's like, all right, okay. And then like the third time. And then like, I'm always like, talk to me the 17th time you've launched this course. You start to get some course launch fatigue.
Oh, no doubt.
Right? So you fully moved over to just this like rolling cohort, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. I like that.
And it doesn't mean you can't do promotions. I mean, we still do promotions. Like we're in the middle of one right now. It's like this full-time author challenge. And so it's like, oh, it's a 5-day challenge. We're helping people sell more books, like stuff like that. And so, we'll still do promotions, but I'm a big, like, iterative guy when it comes to business and anything. And so it's like, I hated the fact that something could totally go wrong. And then that just botches a majority of your revenue, and you're just working up to that for 3 or 4 months. And exactly what you said, it's just launch fatigue. And it's like, man, if I have to hit up my friends one more time to promote this thing, and just like, and then you just feel like, all right, I'm just like, it wasn't for me personally. And so that's why we do the ongoing stuff, and then it just forces you to run an actual business and get better. But on the flip side, like, the highest leverage thing that you could do all year is one of those launches. So it's kind of like that. It's like what I alluded to earlier. It's like I remember someone talking about this concept of crack money, where it's like their mentor told them is like, okay, what's that thing that you could do in a short period of time that would make a big amount of cash, but you can't keep doing it. Right? Because you'll get, so it's like bartending for a lot of people is crack money. It's like, oh my gosh, I can make a ton of money in a short period of time. But if that's not in alignment with your long-term goals and you don't stop and evaluate, well, then you're going to wake up and 15 years later, you're bartending. Right? But the concept as it relates to like business and stuff is like, for me, I ran a house painting company in college. So it's like my version of crack money in the early days was like, okay, I could go paint a couple of houses and make in 2 days make enough money to pay the bills for a month or two, and then I can spend the other 28 days working on my business, right? So it's like, it's really nice. So similar with launches in the early phase of your business, it's really great to get a lot of cash flowing, but then you wake up and you're like, all right, I can't keep doing this long term. It's not sustainable.
I totally feel you. I also get annoyed when people's lists, I get on their list, and at first they're sending a lot of good stuff, and then it's just like a constant launch. And like, we've gone through that too. We're just like, shit, how many sales can we do before people kind of get a little bit turned off? Yeah. Some people never unsubscribe, but then they stop opening as much. Yeah, you got to be really careful about that. Let's get back to the kind of nuts and bolts of books. Your place is called Self-Publishing School. So you specifically went all self-publishing. How come you kind of like eschewed the traditional publishing route?
And early on, it was us versus them. I mean, it was like classic us versus them marketing. And so we were the little guy, the underdog, we're the Uber of the publishing industry. Like, taxis, everyone knew they were broken and no one did anything about it. You felt slimy. You felt like you were taken advantage of. Then Uber came along. Overused analogy, but feels similarly with the publishing world of like, okay, everyone knows that it's like you're getting screwed and traditional publishing industry's broken and all that. So like that was kind of the starting point, but it's the riches are in the niches. Like how do we start very specific and then expand from there? And that's kind of what we've done. So it's, even now it's like, all right, we'll work with some traditionally published authors. And I think in a lot of cases, like what we have to offer, it helps traditionally published authors. But our bread and butter is like putting the power back in the hands of the author and helping them publish it themselves and, kind of control the end-to-end process and all that stuff.
Well, I've also been through the publishing process a few times self, and then I've actually, I don't know if you know, but me and Noah were going to co-author a book when we're working on AppSimoton, and they were going to offer us a 7-figure advance. And the reason is, and we talked to, I think it was like Ramit Sethi's like book, or Tim Ferriss's book publisher guy, and we went to New York and met him, and basically all the book publishing industry wanted was to sell 10,000 books. Is that still the case? Is that a magic number roughly?
For a lot, and for a lot of them, it's 10,000 in week one, so that you can hit some sort of list. Like that could help you hit the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or USA Today bestseller list or whatever. But then, and depending on the advance, it's basically traditional publishers are venture capitalists, right? They're going to place 10 bets on authors. One of those books is going to really go, and 9 of them aren't. And so then the 9 of them are upset that they don't have the rights to their book and their books aren't really selling. And then the one of them is upset because they feel like they've sold all these books and they're not really getting paid what they would like to get paid for selling all those books. But it's the same thing as venture capitalists, right? But then the difference is you have a backlist too. So that's where all the money is in publishing. It's like, okay, the 5 love languages is going to continue selling 1 million books a year till the end of time, right? And so like if I'm a publisher and I own that as part of my backlist, it's recurring revenue business, which not many people would think about books as a recurring revenue business, but they just keep selling. And so it's, all right, how do we cover that the advance is the investment. How do we cover, what's our likelihood of covering that advance and what's the likelihood of long-term sales? And like, that's the business model in a nutshell.
I've never heard it described as VC. That makes total sense. Yeah. Wow, that's pretty interesting.
And so that's also why you see all of these, like the big 5 or the big 7 becomes the big 5 becomes the big 4 and they're just swallowing up all because these publishing companies are often also owned by big media corporations, pretty much all that are owned by Disney, right? But they're owned by big publishing corporation. New CEO will come in and say, hey, I've got to hit quarterly revenue targets. Let's just sell off this publishing division that isn't that profitable. And on the flip side, the other people are saying, oh, I want that backlist and I want guaranteed future revenue. And so that, it just makes sense to just swallow up all those publishing companies.
That's super interesting. But then Amazon comes around. And so for example, each of these books I wrote in less than 3 months. So this book will teach you how to write better, which is actually a book about copywriting. And this one was just like a thesis on like why I picked a day to die when I'm 85 years old. And I wrote both of these in 3 months. And if you look at them, they're super small. Each one's like 48 pages or something. And it's kind of weird. Like it took 3 months to write like this stupid little book, like this tiny little thing. And then I remember when we were doing stuff with an actual traditional author, it was way more of a pain in the ass, like way more. And they wanted like 300 pages. And I was like, there is nothing that you have to take 300 pages to say.
Yes.
There is absolutely nothing nowadays. I can make a video that'll explain this in 5 minutes.
Yes.
And like, we need 300 pages. And I was like, why 300 pages? And then I realized like they want the book to be thick.
Yeah.
Thick book, sell more, more money, right?
Yep.
Thin book, worth less money. Is that actually true?
Yeah. Okay. And they kind of shoot for that 275 page like sweet spot. It's just kind of a solid length of a business book that I'm sure there's other methodology behind it, but then some of it is just, it's how we've done it. So there's not really, it's not.
The 5 love languages, 275 pages. So yours should be 275 pages. Because I remember I read some book, I read a decent amount of books, not as many as you, but I go through a decent amount. And I'll read like half the book and I'm like, that was a great book. And then they'll start just telling like random stories and the book kind of falls apart.
Yeah.
And it's totally just
and then
filled
you're mad.
Did you have to do that?
Why did I do this?
Did you have to put some filler in there?
Oh, no. I was just looking. I was like, wait, now I'm curious. Mine's, I guess, 199 pages.
Dude, you're bucking the trend already because you're self-publishing.
202. Yeah.
But you self-published that, right?
Yes, I did. Yeah. And a lot of it can be dependent on formatting and a bunch of other stuff, but I want ADD friendly books. So that made my book longer, and because there's all these images and all that stuff, because I'm a C-level English student and a college dropout with ADHD. So it's like, I've got to be able to understand this, and I want other people to be able to understand it. But I love as it relates to the length of books, it's like, I learned this from your copywriting course way back in the day. I'll never forget it. I feel like I repeat this often, but it's like, how long should a sales letter be? I think you answered in one of your videos or something. It's like a woman's skirt, long enough to cover the center, short enough to keep it.
We don't talk about that analogy anymore. It didn't age very well. It wasn't mine either. It was Joe Sugarman. To blame him. It was. I think we actually had to edit out of this. Oh yeah, it's still in here. Oh my God, I'm not even going to show it. But it says, copy is like a woman's skirt. It should be long enough to cover the essentials, but short enough to keep it interesting. It's an old quote. Don't blame me.
Look, my team has also said not to reference that quote, but I'm like, you instantly get it.
You instantly get it.
Why can't we just have analogies?
Yeah.
Why can't we have nice
The book was written in 2013, okay? It's not that bad. We'll all live.
Man.
No, but I totally agree. But here's the thing. Here's the only reason that we originally wanted to go through a big seller. The New York Times bestseller list. Come on. I mean, that's like the scam?
Yes.
But when you put that on there, I mean, once you get a New York Times bestseller list, I mean, you just put that on the bio, ba-bam. Right?
Yeah.
It's got that. I know you think it's a scam, but most people probably think it's awesome, right?
For sure. And I kind of tongue in cheek. So the thing is, it's not a real bestseller list, but it doesn't, I mean, as in with anything in life, it doesn't matter what's real. It matters what people think is real. Right. And so if my perception is that is real, then I'm going to view you differently because of that. So basically the New York Times is an editorial bestseller list, which means it's directionally based on units sold, but not actually based on units sold. And so it's editorial, meaning editors make the decisions on what is included and what is not included. So if it's raining in New York, or if my girlfriend just jumped me, or any other number of things, I as the editor, or I can just say, I don't like Neville. I think he's not funny. And so therefore I'm going to take you off the bestseller list, right? Or you're in the internet marketing world, so therefore I don't like that. And like there's been multiple people who have sold way more than enough copies and just got kept off the list. And they knew how much the number one person sold, and they sold more than that, and they weren't on the list, right? So that's my only beef with the New York Times. But Wall Street Journal and USA Today bestseller list are actual. Wall Street Journal is in the middle, and then USA Today is like pure number of books sold. So I think it's the truest bestseller list. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the cachet of I'm a New York Times bestseller still means a lot to a lot of people.
Is there I know people put Amazon bestseller, which I don't know anymore, but at one point it was literally by the minute stats.
Totally.
So you sell 3 books in an hour, and you're at 3 a.m.
Totally.
And you're number one.
Yeah. And I think that's the flip side of it, right? Which that's way overused.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of ridiculous. And so yes, it's still by the minute stats, and it's weighted. They'll never say what the algorithm is, but it's highly weighted towards recency. There's probably 25 to 50% of the algorithm is on last day or last week. Then there's probably another 25% that's last month, and then whatever. And so but it's very much recency weighted, because think about it. If you're Amazon and a consumer comes back and sees the same list every time that they come back, well, they're not going to buy any new books. So it's good for business to have a list that changes.
Yeah.
Because then people are coming back to that list saying, oh, that looks interesting. I'll buy that. And
they have multiple all-time bestseller lists, right? Because
sure.
I remember seeing the number one was the Bible or something along those lines, which it'll probably be for a long time. But then there's also the new bestsellers. Yeah.
So they have hot new releases. And so that's where I think people have taken it too far, which is oh, I'm a hot new release in underwater basket weaving with
the categories
books. It's okay, now I'm an Amazon bestseller. It's that's kind of ridiculous. And I guess it's a classic thing though, right? It's I might think that's ridiculous, but it doesn't matter what it is. It matters what people think that it is.
Fair enough. Good point.
So it's on both ends of the equation. There's truth and there's a version of the truth. But I think and I guess one other thing which is kind of surprising is that the majority of the top 100 books in all of Amazon are fiction books, so there's a difference writing fiction and nonfiction. I always say it's kind of use a baseball analogy. It's nonfiction is way easier to have base hits. singles and doubles. Like you can more predictably make money from a nonfiction book, whereas fiction, it's like a home run hitter. You're going to strike out a lot, but then if you hit a home run, it's going to be big. And so, I mean, the big fiction authors, those are the people who make all the money on Amazon. But it's
so like the Andy Weir, The Martian, all those kinds of things. Yeah. Oh, interesting. So fiction is way bigger money. Serialized
fiction, it's way bigger money for a small group of people. Because I mean, it needs to be good. I need to believe that it's good. There's a higher barrier to entry. It's like I'm not buying a fiction novel from no name so and so. Like it might suck. But if they have a bajillion reviews and a whole series, it's like, I could get into this. And my friend said, hey, it's good. I could get in that series. So,
but generally, like a book like yours, like you're also selling $6,000 a pop, 5 or 10 a day. So you're probably making more overall from like your book world than a fiction author.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the 99.9% of fiction authors, yes. Yeah. But not like the top ones. But yeah, so that goes back to, I mean, if you're thinking about writing a book, it's the classic Simon Sinek, Start With Why, or Stephen Covey, Begin With the End in Mind. It's like, why are you doing it? And for me, it's I want to use this book to bring in lead sales and referrals for self-publishing school. And then also to help people who can't afford our program. So it's like we have a journal, we have like a book outline challenge. Like we do have some lower price, like $47 or maybe even $97 products, but it's like very much that's the self-serve version. And then people read this book and they say, oh my gosh, this is going to help me grow, or like, I love this. So I want to just work with self-publishing school to get my book done. And so that's when I think about it is like, how do you strategically use a book to get more leads, sales, and referrals and advance kind of an ideology? And so I call this the silent salesman because it goes out into the world and brings back lead sales and referrals. And so that's the goal.
Have you ever, our buddy Ryan Holiday, who lives here in town, he's become like this famous author that like everyone knows. And he had this thing in his book called Perennial Seller where he said like, so let's say he has 10 books, right? Which I think he does, something around that area. But he launches a new one. And what happens is, ironically, like you get a little bump in sales from that new one, of course. But what happens is everyone finds the old ones. And the old ones actually make the money. So when you do a book launch, it's not the new one making the money. It's actually all those old 9 books. They're just like, Ryan Holiday, interesting. I don't care about ego as the enemy, but what's this? Trust me, I'm lying. And so they end up doing that. I saw that with like my measly 2 little books. When I did the You're Gonna Die one, people look at your author profile and they see this other one that has like way more reviews and stuff because it's an established book. And they're like, what's that? And they also buy that. Yeah. Do you see that happening with all the author peeps?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, and in fiction, it's a huge thing because it's read-through rate is like one of the biggest, most important things. So it's like
read-through rate?
Yeah. So it's basically like what percentage of people that buy and read book 1 buy and read book 2? What percentage of those folks buy book 3? What percent? So it's serialized, right? And so that is a big indicator. And so you can actually, it's kind of like the measuring stuff like a viral coefficient or anything else where it's like, oh, if you start to see that those numbers are good, you can start pumping ads into the first book and knowing that your numbers are going to kind of shake out a little bit. But then also as you launch new books, that'll boost your backlog or your catalog. And then you're packaging them in box sets and stuff like that. And then same thing on the nonfiction side of things though, which I think will probably be most relevant for your audience, which is, I mean, you see those people that are just going back, and I mean, it's like the Malcolm Gladwells of the world, the Seth Godins, the Ryan Holidays, the John Gordon, you see the same thing where it's like it boosts the catalog.
Interesting. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So speaking of that, so boosting that catalog, building that catalog, do a lot of the authors you work with actually make a living off the books, or is it mostly like a side income? I'm sure there's like some weird obvious distribution of like most people don't make anything, some people make a ton, right? Sure.
Yeah, it's the 80-20 rule, just like with anything else. And so I think and that's where I go back to the base hits versus home runs analogy, where it's like with our nonfiction authors, it's a lot of people like, all right, cool, I'm going to sell some books, I'm going to use this as a platform. Like this is an impact thing for me. This is an authority booster, like the classic. Can't spell the word authority without the word author. It's like I'm becoming an author to build my authority, and just stuff like that. But if if you were strategically, I think the people who make the most money working with us are like, they're strategically using a book to grow their business, or they're like a 1 in 10, like crushing it with fiction book or a few nonfiction books. So it's like, all right, you can either make your money selling books, which you're going to have to publish multiple books. Maybe you'll hit on one, but if you hit on one, you're going to have to market that book like crazy. Or the more predictable path is, all right, I'm using a book to open doors and to grow my business and all that stuff.
Interesting. I mean, I don't care about talking about this, but like I don't promote these at all. This one, the You're Gonna Die one, I never even meant to promote. It's just like a fun experiment I did. This one still makes me about $1,000 a month. I still make $1,000 a month, between $500 and $1,000. I don't promote it. I don't talk about it.
Yeah.
I don't say anything about it. I rarely even say I have a book.
Yeah.
And people go, but I tried to make it free.
Yeah.
Of course you have to charge something.
Yeah.
I was trying to like, can I make it to where people only pay shipping or something? And Amazon's like, you have to charge like $5 or something to even make it worth our while. So I get $1.71 in profit per book sold. And I get, I don't know about you, but does Amazon send you money to your bank account in different countries?
Gosh, so annoying.
I get like 17 deposits every month from Amazon. Sometimes being for like 17 cents. Yeah, they'd be like, someone in India bought your book, and I'm like, your distribution's only 30% of the book, and after taxes and stuff, it's like nothing.
Talk about a first world problem. Right? It's like, it's so annoying that Amazon cuts me 17 different direct deposits every single month. But
I could always tell when it comes in because my bank statement just clogged. It says like Amazon IN, Amazon UK, Amazon JP, Amazon USA. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing that for the first time, experiencing it when I started selling this. It was making a couple thousand actually a month, and I was just like, I could legitimately maybe live off a $5 book. I was kind of surprised. Now, to be fair, I do have somewhat of an audience already.
Yeah.
I have an email list, a YouTube channel. I have something that I can sell it to already.
No doubt.
But then the lion's share of the marketing is through Amazon. Amazon markets. I don't pay for it. I don't know how it does it. It just automatically puts me in there and knows it's a highly bought book based on CTR, I guess. So it shows it in recommended books. Is that what people see? Like most of their books come from the Amazon promotional engine?
Oh, no doubt. And that's when it's the stats. I want to say it's something like 70% of all books sold are sold on Amazon. And so that's the beautiful thing is they're bringing customers. You just have to know how to work that algorithm. Right. So it's like, all right, I'm picking keywords and categories that are going to be discoverable. It's like, what are people actually searching? And I mean, you've kind of probably intentionally, I mean, but maybe
there was nothing intentional. It was all random.
Okay. I mean, how to write better is in the title of your book, which is really good for SEO. So if I search how to write better, either in Google, sometimes that might show up as a product listing, or definitely if I'm searching how to write better in Amazon, that book's more likely to show up because it's in the title. And probably, it's in book description, it's in the actual content of the book. And then the click-through rate is good. So it's like that gets boosted. So there's a bunch of other stuff. And that's not even before you go down the rabbit trail of like just doing a couple strategic, intentional things to maximize reviews. And then also, I mean, are you running Amazon ads?
We tried it for a little bit.
Got it.
Yeah.
Those work a lot better when you have all three formats that you're selling. So if you're selling print, ebook and audiobook, because the print and the audiobook are higher price, so you have a higher average order value, so your Amazon cost of sales is what they call it, is it's easier to make that ROI positive. But I mean, we have a lot of our students that are doing well on Amazon ads because just the inventory is underbid currently, so it's like you can even self-sustain even more sales. And then there's a bunch of the other stuff that we teach, which is like one super simple thing is, I mean, we use this as an opt-in. And so this is how you could set this up for a copywriting course and stuff like that, which is what I do is in the very beginning of the book, we give away the audio. I give away the audiobook for free. And I give away the video. This is basically a webinar that sells self-publishing school. And so right out of the gate, and so people, it's like if you've ever done the look inside feature, so you look inside and preview the book, well, people can download the audiobook or the video without even purchasing the book. So now we're just funneling hundreds, maybe thousands of leads a month. and they don't even have to buy the book. Now, a lot of them will, and some people will think, Chandler's an idiot. He doesn't even know I can get this audiobook for free without even buying the book. But of course I know, like, that lead to me is worth way more than the $1 or $2. And instead of paying for leads, I'm getting paid to get leads, or they're, at worst case scenario, they're free leads, right? So it's just like funneling tons of leads into the ecosystem. But then so that in itself really helps with growing the business.
Hold it up in that camera real quick. Just hold that thing up so people could see it a little bit. Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
That is so smart, dude. I've never heard of anyone like exploiting the feature for, dude, that is really smart.
And because, what's the stat? I want to say it's like 20% of books that get started get finished. Mm-hmm. So when I published my first book, I put the call to action and the lead magnet or the opt-in, whatever, in the back of the book, right? So they're going to finish the book and then they're going to opt into this thing. It's like, well, no, they actually don't do that. So just putting in the beginning, it really bumped everything big time. But then just one small thing in relation to that is like, we have what we call a review sweeper. Mm-hmm. And so it's basically just an automated email sequence. So after someone opts in from any of these things or goes through a free plus shipping funnel or anything, 21 days later, they'll get an email from me. You should totally set this up if you don't have it set up already. They get an email from me and it'll say, hey, I'm just curious, it looks like you got the book a few weeks ago. Like, what do you think? Do you like it? Hit reply and let me know. And then people hit reply, and then, someone on my team, obviously, if it's good, if they're like, hey, this is really great, blah, 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 we'll just reply to that and say, hey, thanks so much. This is really awesome. I'll make sure this gets in front of Chandler. Would you mind just copy and pasting this and leaving it in an Amazon review? Here's the link. So it's just like you're two-stepping your way into a review. And so then that plus, there's a couple other follow-up emails. It's just like, hey, it's like classic. I learned copywriting from you. So it's like that classic kind of stuff, or like, hey, final plea, like, I'm not going to keep bugging you, but like reviews really help me as an author, blah, blah, blah. And that just sweeps in reviews week after week, month after month, that sort of thing.
I've done everything wrong in this book with like the call to actions at the end. It's not very clear at all. It's just like a paragraph. Man, I've done everything wrong
on it. You need a big button.
Yeah.
And one thing I'll even do just while we're on the subject,
interesting.
We're getting like way in the weeds right now. Hopefully this is helpful for people. But
totally.
One small thing is
urgent plea.
Urgent plea. And it's just like, hey, could you leave a review? It's just like a small prompt at the end, but like this triggers the algorithm, which once that book is, if that book is up against another book on how to write better, but that book has more reviews, your book, well then it's going to rank because Amazon's algorithm weighs very highly towards reviews, right? So it's just like all kinds of little stuff like that to
that's so interesting.
Maximize the publicity for.
Well, I think we're going to do a company book, like a team effort from some of the top people at the company. I think we're going to do a book together.
Nice.
I don't know if it's going to be the biggest seller in the world. I think it'll just be fun.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to include a lot of these little tricks. I've never actually heard these at all.
Nice.
Damn, this is good stuff.